Hello and welcome to Fast and Furious Storyline Show. Today, we're just talking about hubs and learning hubs and building learning hubs. All right, thanks for joining. And today is about learning hubs. And what I mean by learning hubs is it's a central location, probably a slide that has spokes leading off of that, allowing the learner to visit different sets of content in whatever order they choose. So, for example, you could have a page of content and there's 4 objects on that particular slide, and before the learner can move to the next slide, you want them to click on those 4 objects. Or you have 4 topics that you want to cover in the learning program, and it really doesn't matter which order of topics the learner goes through first. They can go through, let's say, A, B, C, and D. They can go through B, D, C, A, or any combination thereof. But what we're going to build today is we're going to lock down the navigation, so we're going to force the learner to click on those particular objects, view the content, and then have a continue button display only after all of that pieces of content has been viewed by your learner. This is a really cool way to allow the learner to control their learning. It's a really cool way to break away from the linear style that a lot of developers use in StoryLine. And after all, as adult learners, we want to control our learning. We want to be able to decide what we're learning, how we're learning it, and being able to pick and choose on a slide that we're going to create is a really neat way of providing a learner with that kind of control. It could also be used for gamification. It could also be used to control navigation. So in a lot of ways, what we're going to build is fun. We're going to be using a lot of intermediate level pieces here. We're going to be using states, we're going to be using layers, and we're going to be using triggers and variables. So we're going to create variables to set a Boolean, whether or not a true-false event has occurred. In our case, the pseudocode being, hey, did the learner click on this? If they clicked on it, then we're going to change the variable to yes. And then we're going to do another section, another check with triggers to say, are all 4 of those variables equal to true? And if they are, then we're going to show a continue button and allow the user to keep moving forward. Pretty straightforward, but there's a lot of complicated steps. And of course, as always, the files will be available for you at the conclusion, at the link down below in the comment section of the YouTube channel. And so feel free to support our channel and feel free to learn all you want. But once again, this is about learning hubs and the creation and limiting of navigation until the learner has clicked on every spoke of that hub. Let's go do it. All right, ready to get started with our spoke and hub concept. I love the idea of creating learning where the learner gets to choose what they do next. And this is the example that we're going to use for the Storyline show today. The spoke and hub really of this particular learning is that this learning hub slide has 4 links off of it that the learner has to click on before they're able to advance to the next slide. So in this particular instance, the light bulb, the camera, the palette, and the brushes are the hotspots. And so when you download the source files and the assets for this particular Storyline episode, then you'll get the AI file, the Adobe Illustrator file of this graphic piece. Plus, you'll get all of the elements in the story file, as well as the finished file that we're going to be building. So let me save this as the finished file. Perfect. And we will begin. Perfect. So the first thing that I want to draw your attention to is that we have these 4 objects, and I've made them hover with a hover state. So what I did is that the camera has a hover state of a red glow, the light bulb does, the palette does, and the paint brushes do. I've created a page that has directions on it. Click the camera, the light bulb, the brushes, and the palette. After you've clicked them all, click the continue button. But here's the thing, the layers that we're going to show the learner, so they're going to click on this camera, we're going to have that camera layer show up. They click on the light bulb layer shows up. And the brush and the palette are all layers that are going to show up. But here's the cool part, is that when they click this close button on every slide, then after they've clicked all the close buttons and visited all the slides, we have this continued layer that says, thank you for reviewing the content, hope you have a better understanding, and they're able to continue. But we don't want the learner to move on until they've clicked on all 4 of those objects. And you can see right now the next button shows up on the interface, which defeats our purpose. So the first thing I'm going to do is in the story view, I am going to remove that next button from slide 1. Notice there were 2 arrows pointing down to the second slide. Now there's only 1, because quite frankly, the only way the learner is going to be able to get to that very next slide is by clicking on this continue. And you can see, oops, we have a swipe here. Let me remove the swipe as well. Perfect. So 1 arrow. Camera, brush, light bulb, palette. So how this is going to work is we're going to create a set of true, false, or Boolean variables. And the way I like to create my variables is that wherever slide the variable is on, that's usually the first section. So I'll be like 001 because we're on slide 1, or 1-1 because we're on slide 1-1. And then I also will like refer to these as objects. So like this is object 1 and object 2 and object 3 and object 4. So let's create those variables first. So we have our project variables. We have none. I'm going to click the green plus, which is going to create a variable. We're going to go 001 underscore object 01 underscore. We're just going to call that camera. That'll make it a little easier for us. The type I changed to true false, and the default value is false. Perfect. Let's create another one. 001 object 02, and this one will be the light bulb. And it is a Boolean, and it's false. I keep saying Boolean. That's what we refer to them in JavaScript and ActionScript. But StoryLine calls them true false. So hard habits are hard to break. So we're going to do the palette next. So we're going to go 001 object 03 PALLET. Actually, I think it's 1L PALETTE. It is a true false, and it's false. And then our last one is 001 object 04 underscore brushes, and text is true false, or type is true false, default value is false. Perfect. False, false, false. No uses. We have our 4 variables. Perfect. So the pseudocode, if you've listened to other StoryLine shows, you know how I like to refer to pseudocode. The pseudocode is as follows. When the user clicks on the camera icon, we're going to change the camera variable to true and show the camera layer. And then when the learner clicks on this X to hide this layer, we're going to do a check. And the check is going to be, hey, are all 4 of those variables true? If they are true, then the continue layer can show up, which is pretty cool. Okay. So once the continue layer shows up, then the user can click continue. But what else is neat is that the learner can also go back and keep clicking on these objects to go back and review the content. Now keep in mind, this particular learning hub has layers. All right. The layers can also, you can use the same technique for light boxes. You can use the same technique for having a chain of slides. So let's say you clicked on the camera icon and it went to a different scene. And you had 5 slides on that scene, and same thing with the light bulb and everything else. And then maybe this next slide was a conclusion slide. Hey, congratulations, you got through all the training. Imagine that, having literally 1-2 slides for your entire program, and then these additional scenes for those additional hubs. But in this case, we're going a little easy. We're just going to use layers. So once again, click the camera, show the camera layer, change that variable to true. So let's program that. I've clicked on my camera icon, adding a trigger, and we are going to show a layer. Which layer are we going to show? The camera. And what happens when the user clicks on the camera icon and click OK. Boom. But now we also want to have the camera variable change. So we're going to adjust the variable, set object 1 camera to true. When the user clicks the camera, click OK. Perfect. So technically this is what we need, but StoryLine is going to go from a top to bottom stacking order with triggers. And so we need to set the variable to true first and then show the camera layer, because right now it's going to show that camera layer and then not change it to true because it's going to jump to that camera layer. fix that by using this up and down arrow here, moving that trigger up. So now it goes camera value true, show layer camera, boom, good to go. So let's just rinse and repeat. We have the light bulb. We are going to adjust the variable. We're going to change the light bulb variable to true when the user clicks it. And then we are going to show layer. Which layer? Light bulb. Light bulb layer when the user clicks light bulb. Perfect. And the stacking order is right. The variable change first, then the layer change. All right, here's the palette. Boom. We're going to show layer. What layer? Palette when the user clicks it. And then we're also going to change that variable. And that's the palette variable to true when the user clicks it. And now if you take a look, we're inverted, so we've got to make sure that our variable goes up first. And then last but not least is our lovely paint brush. So we're going to change the brush variable to true when the user clicks brushes. And then I'm going to show the layer brushes when the user clicks brushes. Perfect. So technically, half of our work is done. Right now we have the variable changing depending on what we're clicking on, brushes, palettes, light bulbs, or cameras, and then we're showing the layer. What I would like to do is I want to attach the logic on whether or not they've clicked on all four to this button. Now right now this button is going to close the layer. So let's add show layer continue, which is that pop-up that says, hey, congratulations, you've clicked on all the icons, and that gives you the continue button when the user clicks that rectangle. But here's where it gets cool. Conditions! Boom! If the camera is equal to true, if the light bulb is equal to true, if the palette is equal to true, and lastly, if the brush is equal to true. And check this out. Once again, I'm going to change this to the top of the stacking order. So now it's going to show that continue later if these four variables are true. If not, okay, I'm going to hide the layer. Pretty neat. Now, I could copy and paste this button onto all the layers, but you can see I already have it on all the layers. So what I'm going to do is instead I'm going to copy just this trigger. So I highlight the trigger, and then I click on this copy selected trigger icon. Boop. And then I go to the brush layer, I click on that icon, and then I paste. And remember, it's got to be in the right stacking order. And I click on light bulb, boom, paste, and then palette, boom, paste, and there we go. So technically, we're done. I'm going to preview the scene. And let's test our work. Camera rollover, light rollover, boom, palette rollover, button. Perfect. I'm going to click the brushes, brings up the illustration layer. Click up the palette, and I click up the idea, and then I click up the camera, and boom, look at this. Here is our beautiful continue button. Click continue, and it moves on to that next slide. Pretty neat stuff. Okay. So I'm going to go back and to show you kind of a bug we have. You notice the learner has already gone through this page and we have no continue button. So we're going to fix that. Also, I don't know if you noticed that I don't have any visual clear idea of whether or not this camera has been selected or not. Now, because keep in mind, all these are true, so all I do is click on one and boom, this showed up. But I want to fix it and make it a little bit better. So the first thing I want to fix is I want to fix the state. I want to be visually clear to the learner that they clicked on these objects. So I'm going to go to that, click on the camera icon, and click on states, click on edit states, and I'm going to add a visited state name. And all I'm going to do is change the color to black and white. I'm going to do this for each of those objects. Edit state. Add a state, visited, and then I'm going to recolor that to gray. Last but second to last, we're going to edit states, and we're going to add a visited state, visited, and change the color. And our last one is the paint bucket, edit state, or the brush bucket, create a new state, visited, and then recolor it to gray. Perfect. And the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a trigger to the timeline, so that anytime a customer or a learner goes to this slide, if those values are true, we're going to show the continue button. So we're going to create and we're going to show a layer, continue, when the timeline starts on this slide, if camera is equal to true, if light bulb is equal to true, if palette is equal to true, and if brush is equal to true. All right, so when the timeline starts on this piece, if all these are true, it's going to automatically show this layer instead of giving directions to click. The learner will still be able to click on all these wonderful pieces, but the trues will hold. I'm going to make one last change. I'm going to click on this slide. When revisiting, I'm going to have it reset to initial state, which means it's going to remember that it's going to forget that the learner went through all these pieces and give them the opportunity to click on them, but it's going to change the icons from gray to their full color. So cool. Let's preview this scene. Perfect. Click on light bulb idea. Boom. Light bulb changes to gray. Oh, that's awesome. Camera, gray. Palette, gray. Brushes, gray. Continue. Awesome. Click continue. Nice work. Additional slides follow or whatever. If I go back, boom, look at it. Remembers that I've already done this exercise and clicked all these pieces, and I've reset these icons so that they're not gray anymore. But of course, when I click on them again, they go gray. All right. Very cool stuff. So I hope you enjoyed this edition of the StoryLine Show. Once again, these assets are available for a low, low price in the link below in the comments of the YouTube page. But thank you so much for tuning in to this current edition of the StoryLine Show, and thank you so much. Go and build some cool learning hubs, and have a great day.